going to test sharing that final slide when I do mine. Let's see. All right, I think I got it.
I have the same tie on. You're gonna think I planned that. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. I forgot I should have worn my blazer today.
That's okay. I'm keeping you on your toes with this tie thing.
Yeah. Even the butler outdressed me.
So when you start, do you want me to start sharing the slides, or do you want to share the slides and then have me share the slides?
Let's see.
I mean,
I guess go ahead, because you got them all, they're already on your deck. So we'll just have you share. And then when I get to when we first start, if you want to have that title up, and then when I start to introduce you, if you want to click over to the bio slide, and then when I start talking about, but then I'll say something like, how are you doing? And then I'll say, oh, and before I hand this over to you, Jack, I just wanted to let everybody know that, we're looking for people to serve on the following 2021 committees and mastermind divisions. And if they were interested, I'm going to put the link in the chat box where they could sign up to become a volunteer next year for RRC.
Okay, well, I'm sharing now, so you're all good to go.
Yeah, we'll do that. And then when I start talking about you, we'll go to that, then we'll go to the next.
Yep.
And then after I say that, I'll say, well, Jack, I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm going to hand this over to you. And then,
Okay.
and then I'll try to, I'll help you out at the end with the questions because it's probably going to be a lot.
That's good. So, and you're recording, correct?
Oh yeah, not yet, but I will be. Yeah. Right now we're out on live on YouTube right now.
Right. So, but when you do record, you also get a document with all the questions too.
Yes. Yeah. The chat box, they do send me a transcript of that.
So if you could send me that, that'd be awesome. I can make sure I didn't miss any questions afterwards.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That'll be, yeah. Thanks a lot for doing that.
I can always do a post somewhere or do a video or whatever we miss. I'll shoot a video and get that over to you that you can send out.
Oh yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jack.
My pleasure.
And do you have a certain time that you need to be out of here? Because then we can always cut it.
Yeah, 5-ish.
Oh, okay. We're not going to go that long.
No, I think I have something. Maureen's covering everything, and I have something at 4. So
okay.
I have to go. They're putting a new refrigerator in my boat, so I have to go check on that because the new one didn't fit in the space of the old one. So they're doing all this carpentry now. It's such a pain in the ass.
Okay.
My drink fridge, my little fridge for drink.
Yeah, that's gotta have that.
My water fridge, right?
I'm gonna go ahead and just open it up. We're not gonna start, but it takes a little bit for them to trickle in.
Yeah. And you'll mention pillar to post also.
Yes. Oh, yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to CRS Week 2020 and today's webinar, Selling Luxury Homes, What's the Story? CRS Week 2020 is sponsored by Pillar to Post. Pillar to Post Home Inspectors is the largest and leading home inspection company in North America. We want to thank them for their sponsorship of CRS Week. They've been doing that for quite a few years now, and we really do appreciate that. We're recording the webinar today, so you will have access to that recording to go back and watch it over and over again if needed, or if you missed out on something, you will be able to watch that recording probably up to 1 to 2 years even. It'll be in your account on CRS.com. And I just want to remind everybody, during this week, we are sending out the email with the link and everything. And I know some of you have emailed me and said how you didn't get it. Just remember, even if you don't get the email, you do have the link. It's in your account on CRS.com. It will be there at least a couple hours, maybe even 3 to 4 hours before the webinar starts. But it'll be there. You'll just log into your account on CRS.com. Once you go to there, you have to actually click on login, put in your email address, your password, and then go to My Education. Find that webinar, click on it. There'll be a link in there for the affidavit, the valuation, the slides, the link to get into the webinar. This is also where you'll go to get to recording as well. And as well as the affidavit. But I want to say, everybody that's on here today, you will automatically get credit. So you do not need to worry about going ahead and filling out that affidavit. But if you're watching the recording of this here, that affidavit is in your account. The link for the valuation is in your account on CRS.com. So you'll just click on them. You can fill out the account, even if you're watching this a year later, no problems. And I'm very excited about today's webinar because we have a great speaker back. It's one of our RRC CRS certified instructors. Jack Cotton is joining us. You might have seen him on a webinar here or there. Maybe you've seen him at Celebration, one of our live courses. Jack's all over the place. Jack is celebrating his 46th year in the real estate business. I think he started when he was about 10 years old. And with a startup in his college dorm room. And he's very well known in the luxury real estate circles, which makes him the perfect speaker for today's webinar. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great today. Thank you for having me here, Paul. It's fun to be with so many people.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of people here today. Just so you know, we're like at 525 and climbing. But I just wanted to also take the time to say, we are also at this point, we are looking for people to serve on the following 2021 committees and mastermind divisions. If this is something you think you'd be interested in becoming a volunteer for CRS, RRC, and the coming year, you have up until September 30th to apply. If you're watching the recording, the link's up there. I am going to post this into the chat box, but we would appreciate any kind of help you could get. And I said for committees and masterminds, but if you also wanted to volunteer to do a webinar, feel free to contact us, contact me personally if you're interested in doing a webinar, and we'll see what we can do. With that said, I don't want to take any more of your time, Jack. And so why don't I go ahead and hand this over to you?
Thank you, Paul. And also, I want to mention that I've been a CRS since, I think it was 1986, I got my designation. And over the decades, I've volunteered a lot. And I have to say, whenever I volunteer, I almost feel guilty a little bit. Guilty. And the reason I feel guilty sometimes is that I get back 10 times more than what I put into CRS. The people I meet, the strategies I learn, the friendships I've made, the people I can go to for advice and help and counsel when it's needed, the sharing that takes place. Get more involved with the council because it's the hugest growth experience you can ever have in your business. And I really, whatever success I've had in my business, in a large part is because of my affiliation with CRS and my CRS friends from all across the country and indeed even around the world. So today we're going to talk about luxury real estate. What's the story? I'll begin with a little bit of backstory because, people always ask me, well, Jack, what is the best way to get started in luxury real estate? And I always say, well, if you can pull it off, the best plan is to be born rich and well connected. I mean, if you can be born rich and well connected, it's the absolute best way to start in this business. I mean, it's so cool because you get up in the morning and you go to the golf course and you have your golf things with you and you meet this person there. I think he's called a starter and he matches you up with somebody else who's either a Fortune 500 CEO or highly successful professional person or something like that. You go out and play 9 holes and you probably get a referral or 2 in the morning and then you break for lunch. And while you're sitting at the club overlooking the 9th tee, people come over to your table to say hello and you get another referral. And then you go back and play 9 more holes. And then you go back, get cleaned up, go back to the club for cocktails and dinner, whereupon you get referral. So if you can be born rich and well connected and have a platinum Rolodex, you can skip this class because that's the perfect way to start in this business. It wasn't my start. And I'm not going to go into real detail with my start, except to say that I did start in 1974. This was my first car, even though it was 1974. This is a 1969, I think, Ford Maverick with a black racing stripe on the hood and a 3-speed standard shift on the column. And in the May of 1974, there was a freak snowstorm in Boston and I got rear-ended. And I didn't, and I collected $600 in insurance money. And I took that $600 and I started my real estate company in my dorm room in 1974. After graduation in May, I had a desk in the corner of a plumbing supply warehouse here on Cape Cod. And if that doesn't sound pathetic, I mean, look at me with the hair and the, oh my gosh, and all the pipes and everything all around me. And if you think this is sad, I used to make my own signs. I couldn't afford to make my own signs. And let's not forget, those of you who are in my age category, you know that back in the 1970s, there was no desktop publishing. If you wanted to make your own sign, you had to either make a silk screen thing or you were, in my case, it have the 24 by 36 inch Masonite things that I had to paint dark blue and stick vinyl letters on there to be a for sale sign. It was just beyond pathetic and sad. And the biggest problem I had, aside from being clueless, a know-it-all, and just a complete idiot as a kid, the biggest issue I had was that starting in my business, everyone I was dealing with was way older than me, way more successful than me, way more wealthy than me, way more experienced than me. And that went for my competitors as well. So I learned that if I really wanted to be successful in this business, number one, I had to be seen as an expert, which I'll talk about in a moment. And number two, the power of story helped make that connection between the chasm of age, of experience, of success, of accomplishment, and wealth. It's the power of story that really got me where I needed to go. So we'll talk a little bit about luxury defined, high net worth individuals, and why they respond so well to the power of story. We'll talk about the three parts of the story, a 45-second retro visit to your English class from high school, how to use stories in a process, and then lastly, how to connect with high net worth individuals using the power of story. But before we get to all that, I'll explain to you why this all works. And the reason it all works is because when we think of the definition of luxury, the power of story just becomes so evident, because how do you define luxury? Well, things that are luxurious tend to be more expensive, more pricey. They tend to be scarce. They tend to be rare. Not everybody can have them. That makes them somewhat exclusive. Luxury strives for perfection. Luxury doesn't always achieve perfection. In fact, if you buy, for example, a luxurious Oriental rug, a real one from the Middle East, you'll notice that there's always a mistake in the rug, that the weaver makes a mistake when they're weaving the rug on purpose, because only Allah is perfect. And so luxury strives for perfection. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect to be luxurious. Luxury has integrity. Luxury is beyond compare. Have you ever heard Rolls-Royce denigrating Bentley in a commercial? Have you ever heard Porsche saying how slow Ferraris are 0 to 60? No. Luxury has complete integrity, and luxury stands on its own. But most importantly, I think the best describer I would use for luxury is that anything you buy that's considered luxurious has history. And what is history? History is a story. People who buy luxurious items oftentimes are buying into a story. And oftentimes it's a real story, and sometimes it's a fake story. What comes to mind? Ralph Lauren, the whole polo thing is a complete fake story, but people buy it. They love the story. They know it's fake, but they like it anyway. And every time they have a little horse, where's my horse? A little horse on their shirt or on their socks, they are buying into that story and becoming part of that story. And that's what they're buying into. When people buy a fancy car, whether it's a Porsche or a Ferrari or whatever, when they settle in behind the wheel of that car and they wrap their fingers around that leather or wood steering wheel, they close their eyes and they think about the history of that vehicle on the racetrack. And suddenly they are becoming a part of that story. They are living part of that story. So you can see why having the power of story in luxury is so important, because it's the cornerstone of the definition of luxury, having history, having a story. Let's talk a little bit about wealthy people, not too much, but just enough. I've identified 4 categories: Juanas, Kindas, Reallys, and Supers. I'm not going to go into the characteristics of each and every one of them, but I will sort of talk to you about the common traits of all 4 of these categories that I dreamed up. And the common thread all the way through that is how they respond to stories. First of all, I think it's interesting that if you ask rich people, if you ask, a Juana, what's a rich person, they always define rich as being the people who are in the category above them. So they always think that they're not rich, but the people above them are rich. Only 22% of high net worth individuals think that $1 million makes you rich. That's interesting. And what's even more interesting is that celebrities, entertainers, and athletes can be in any one of those 4 categories. Less than 5% of the population can be defined as rich if rich is defined as having $1 million in net worth. And if you take a more stringent definition, which is where you exclude somebody's primary residence, we're now talking more like 1% of the population qualifies as being rich. But most rich people you talk to don't really consider $1 million as making you rich. They often spend like crazy on 1 or 2 things, and they're cheap on other stuff. So here I am up on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. Speaking of Bentleys and Rolls Royces, we don't really have them. We don't have a lot of those around here. In fact, I've always wanted a Bentley, and I have a big birthday coming up in a couple of years, and I'm thinking about it. But, you know, driving around here in a Bentley, people would think, what a dope. Who does he think he is driving around in a Bentley? But here on Cape Cod, if you go down to where I keep at the boat place, every single boat is $1 million and up, and no one thinks twice about that. So people on the high end tend to spend like crazy on 1 or 2 things, and then they can be cheap on other stuff. We have people here who drive around in 30-year-old Ford Country Squire station wagons with the springs gone in the back, but they have multi-million-dollar houses and multi-million-dollar boats. So oftentimes they spend like crazy on 1 or 2 things. But the common thread all the way through here is that they love stories. Stories are how you connect with them. So how do we meet their expectations? Number 1, do you think that wealthy people want to have generic anything? They don't even buy generic bread or milk. They want the branded milk. We need to decommoditize our business. We do that by bringing value and adding value. We need to have USP'S, otherwise known as unique selling propositions. What is it that you do that no one else with whom you compete does? What makes you unique and better and bring more value? We want to build relationships. The real estate business can be a very transactional sort of thing where, you know, somebody calls you when they need to sell, or they call you when they need to buy, and then the transaction gets done and everybody says, bye-bye. Whereas in high-end real estate, it's more of a relationship. The goal here is to become somebody's trusted real estate advisor. I sold a house to some people 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I forget now. They actually tore it down and built a new one. They're going to give it to their kids before the end of the year. So there's not going to be a sale for me, but I'm going over there because I have to do a CMA for them so they can have a valuation for when they put it into a trust for their kids. I am their trusted real estate advisor. I want them to think of me whenever they have a situation like that. They're going to give this property to their kids and they need a valuation. They think to call me. I want them to do that. This is not a transactional business. We want to build relationships. So when we look at the definition of luxury and we look at the characteristics of wealthy people, we can see where having a story makes a perfect pairing, a perfect mesh, a perfect coming together of the 2 concepts. So as we connect with high net worth individuals, whether it's a listing presentation or a buyer presentation, we can be tempted to use really cool slides or lots of data and facts and numbers and spreadsheets and all that stuff, maybe even some cool slides for your listing presentation. But all this stuff just tends to go over their heads. They glaze over. They might even yawn. It's not a story. It doesn't connect. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't compute with high net worth individuals. So what is it about stories that work in high-end real estate that help us connect with wealthy people, that differentiate ourselves? The power of story can differentiate you, can differentiate your company, and can also differentiate your listings and draw attention to your listings. We can also differentiate our brand, our company, and ourselves through the power of story. Being known as a good storyteller is a great way to get more business. The word does get out. We are getting come list me calls from people, for example, who like the storytelling we do in the marketing of our listings. We try to tell a story with every house we list. And sometimes it's really easy because there's a story buried there somewhere in the past. And sometimes we have to make one up. But anyway, again, it's where the definition of luxury and the characteristics of the high net worth individuals we're dealing with come together, the power of story. It helps you bridge that gap between you and the client, whether there's an age difference or an experience difference or a level of achievement difference or a wealth difference. You can get on the same wavelength as someone when you connect with them via the use of a story. Here's the thing though, a lot of people think that because it's a story, oh, well, I can be loose, I can be disorganized, I could just, make up a story as I go along, or just dream up something on the spot, on the fly, so to speak. And nothing could be further from the truth. Your story needs to be carefully considered and crafted to convey your USPs, to convey your brand. They need to entice, enthrall, and engage your luxury clients. And they need to be packaged, delivered, and relevant. The stories I tell, for example, during a listing presentation, some of which I will walk you through today later on, I do them over and over and over again. And in fact, if you're just starting this, I always tell people, practice on somebody, practice on someone in your office, practice on someone in your family, practice on, well, your pet, if it's a dog. It does not work on cats, but I know it works on dogs. My dog is an absolute power listener. He's what you call an active listener. And I can tell because of the way he does this and this and this. And the expressions when I talk, I know I'm on the right track. Your mind will actually sync with another person when you are telling them a story. And that's a pretty cool thing to think about. Okay, so here's where I get back to your high school English class a little bit, where we talk about the 3 parts of a story. And I promise not to dwell on this too much, but if you think of any story that you've read or any movie that you've watched, there's a villain, there's a hero, and there's an ending. Everything gets resolved. And typically the hero has a journey, has a confrontation with the villain, and hopefully overcomes the villain and has a glorious, wonderful ending when it's all said and done. Well, this framework also works for us as we deal with stories in luxury real estate. So we have, instead of a villain, we have a problem, and we have a solution, and we have a benefit. And the goal here, or the way to make yourself more effective here, is to wrap your solution in a story. So when we get to my listing presentation, a few slides away from now, I will show you how I take a USP and wrap a story around it, because that makes it more relevant. That syncs my mind with that of the seller, gets us on the same page and helps us bond better. It increases my odds, my chances of getting a listing in that appointment. Does that make sense? And by the way, if you have questions, you can just type them on the side here. I see like there's 99 comments already over there, and we will save time at the end for questions. And I told Paul that if I don't get to all the questions today, and I'm happy to stay after if we need to, but I'll get a transcript of all the questions, and I'll make a video later on to answer the questions we don't get to today. So if you have a question, don't hold back, because my goal is to make sure that they all get answered. Anyway, where did I leave off here? Oh yeah. So most importantly, stories need to convey value. Your value, the value of your property, and the value of your process. We have a process for everything. Luxury is all about process. Luxury is all about exceeding the expectations of your client. And the way you do that is by having a process. Do you think, for example, when somebody walks in to check into a Ritz-Carlton, they walk up to the front desk, that the person behind the counter is just going to make it up as they go along? Oh, let's see. Oh yeah, they want a room. I'll look at my computer for a room, and oh, the want a key. No, they have a whole process, because their goal is to surprise, delight, and exceed the expectation of their client. They do that by having a process. So we build a process through stories. And I had in here a a story about the shoe shine guide that if we have time at the end, I'll share that with you. But basically, you know, we have a 5-step sales process that is enhanced using the power of STORI. Like me, know me, trust me, pay me, refer me. That's it. Like me, know me, trust me, pay me, refer me. Following that 5-step process will get you more business, and having stories will help you cement that process and make that process more effective with your clients. So again, we have a process for everything. Ritz-Carlton has a process for everything. We have a process for pre-listing, a process for listing, a process for pricing, a process for offers. The more you have a process, the more you're going to bond and relate to your clients. Make sense? Awesome. So anyway, I told you that I started in 1974. I told you that I was a clueless kid who thought he knew everything, who didn't think he had to work for another company or another agent first. Just started a real estate company because how hard can it be? And turned out to be really hard. But there was something there somewhere which might have been divine intervention or divine guidance or something. But somehow I knew that to be successful in luxury real estate, that I had to be having USPs. I had to be different. I had to be seen as an expert. I had to be different and better than my competition. The number one USP you can have in luxury real estate is expertise. There's 5 areas of expertise. I won't go into great depth on all of them, but here we go. Markets and value, pricing, market preparation, marketing, and negotiation. Those are the 5 critical areas of expertise. And just having those areas of expertise on their own won't always be enough to get you the business. We have to wrap them in a story to have them have more value, to have more meaning to our clients. When I mentioned USPs and having USPs and sweating your USPs, I like to go out into my marketplace and look at the other luxury competitors who I have, and I design my USPs around what they do by doing the opposite. And that's where SWOT comes in. You've heard of a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, everything they do. E stands for everything they do, and T stands for turn it around. So for example, if I want to come up with a USP for my business, I would look at what do the people in my market do? Well, a lot of them hire a stager. Great. Stager is a great way to get a property ready for the market. A stager is a great way potentially to get a home ready for sale.
Jack, can I just interrupt you just for a second?
Yeah.
Somebody wanted to know if you could just repeat those 5 areas of expertise again.
Absolutely. The 5, if I can remember them, the 5 critical areas of expertise are: number 1, markets and value. You need to be an expert in markets and value. What are things selling for per square foot, per front foot? What are the metrics in your market? What's the average days on market? What's the average listed sales price ratio? Be an expert on markets and value for your market. Number 2, be an expert in pricing. How do you take that market knowledge and translate it into a value, go to market value or potential list price for an individual property? So markets and value, number 1, pricing, number 2. Number 3 is market preparation. How do you get your listings ready for the market? That's your area of market expertise. And I'm going to contrast that with staging in a second. Number 4 is marketing. You need to be an expert in marketing. How do you expose your listing to the world? It is more than just putting it in MLS and getting a picture and writing some copy and sticking it on the internet, because everybody does that. We're going to talk about how we can differentiate ourselves in these USPs compared to what everybody else does. And then the last area of expertise is negotiation. You need to be seen as an expert in negotiation. And in fact, I'm just finishing, I think, a 5-part class on negotiating for CRS. Class 5 is this coming Friday. And it's a really important area of expertise, because when you're dealing in luxury real estate, you know, whatever your market will bear in terms of house price, whether it's 5 million or 50 million, the people you're dealing with usually are doing transactions in their own business many times that. I mean, some of our clients are doing transactions in hundreds of millions of dollars, if not the billions of dollars. Sometimes we have billionaires on both sides of a transaction. How do we equalize the playing field between ourselves and them? So acquiring expertise in negotiation is critical to being successful in luxury real estate. So I'm going to share with you some items from my own listing presentation and how we use stories in our marketing. Just want to make sure, everybody, I will, I can type that in the comments later on too, if you want those 5 things later on in the comments. But anyway, somehow I knew, and I don't know how I knew, like I said before, I think it was like divine guidance or divine intervention, that to be successful in real estate as a 21-year-old, starting his own company in his college dorm room, operating out of a plumbing supply warehouse, that if I was going to compete with the people who look like I look now, gray and wrinkled, which means he must have experience, and he's got that much gray hair and that many wrinkles, he must really know what he's doing. Anyway, I knew that for me to compete with those older, more experienced people, that I had to become an expert. I had to be seen as an expert somehow. Somehow I was drawn to that. If you're not born rich or well connected, you better be seen as an expert. That's the critical thing that I learned. But I also learned, reading up on Albert Einstein, that expertise in and of itself is just not enough. You can be the biggest pricing expert, the biggest market value expert, the biggest market preparation expert, the biggest marketing and negotiation expert. But if nobody knows about it, then you're all dressed up with no place to go. How do you connect across those generations? That's where the importance of using story comes in to play. Stories convey your expertise. You can sit there. I mean, a lot of salespeople, the whole presentation is a data dump. I am this, I'm number one, I'm this, I'm that, I'm. A story helps, again, sync with the person you are talking to. And it makes the data relevant. Without a story, the data does not have relevance. It adds soul to your data. You do want soul in your data, correct? So anyway, I'm going to talk about my marketing plan a little bit. I could talk, when I do a listing presentation, I could just say, well, we're going to take some great pictures of your house, and we're going to get your home ready for sale. I'm going to hire a stager. We're going to, we're going to let people in the house to see it. When it's ready to be seen, we're going to put it on the internet. And that's what most people talk about in a listing presentation. And it all starts to sound the same, and it all starts to be generic. In fact, a lot of us are using the same presentation software. I know that everybody on Cape Cod, where I am, is pretty much using, I think, Cloud CMA. And before that, we were using Toolkit CMA. So basically, we're all using the same stuff now to do our work. How do you differentiate? How do you make yourself different and better and have a higher perceived value than the other people you're competing with in your company, in your office, or in your whole marketplace? And it really comes down to using the power of story versus just doing a data dump on the people that you are about to present to. But the first story I begin with, and you really need to think about this when our time together draws to a close, one of your first homework assignments should be to create a buyer profile story. Because if you walk into a seller's house and you say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. Here's my listing presentation. Here's my marketing plan. We're going to have at it, and we're going to go nuts, and we're going to get your home exposed to a gazillion people, and one of them is going to buy it. As opposed to saying to the seller, would you like to know who's going to buy your house? 1 out of 100 times, maybe 1 out of 200 times, a seller will actually say to me, Jack, who do you think is going to buy my house? And, you know, I really hate not knowing the answer to a question. So I think the first time somebody asked me this, gosh knows how many years ago that was, I had to really think about an answer to that question, because typically if somebody asks you that question, the average realtor will say, well, I don't know, I guess we'll find out, won't we? So now I don't wait for a seller to ask me, Jack, who's going to buy my house? I say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you like to know who's going to buy your house? And this is where we tell the buyer profile story. So you need to sit down and create that story for your marketplace. That will take a little bit of research, maybe 10 or 15, 20 minutes at the most. Who is a typical buyer for luxury real estate in your marketplace? So I tell a whole story. I'll say, you know, here's who's going to buy your house. They're in their late 50s, early 60s. They live inside the 495 belt as it wraps around Boston. They're corporate or professional people. Their kids are just leaving high school or in the first year or two of college. They've worked really, really hard to be in a position to buy a home like yours. And in the course of doing so, they've made some big sacrifices. They've made some big, not errors, but they've made some decisions that weren't always the best for their family. They've missed recitals, they've missed dinners, they've missed games, they've missed sporting events. Your home, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is going to be the magnet that pulls this family back together again. Your home, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is going to be the magnet that heals all the wounds that have occurred in this family during the course of time it took for the people to be able to afford your house. So here's my outline of my buyer profile story. So after I tell them the buyer profile story, then I can go into, here's how we're going to find that person. Now, everything you talk about in your marketing plan makes sense because it's not abstract. So here I am, I'm on Cape Cod, and a lot of water around here. Where there's water, there are fish. Where there are fish, there are people who like to catch fish. And basically, if a fisher person was like a realtor, they would just walk up to the water's edge with their fishing pole and stick anything on the hook and just start casting out into the ocean to see what they catch. And something's going to bite, probably. I don't know, as long as it has fins, right? But a true person who understands the sea and understands the whole thought of fishing, first of all, they know what kind of fish they want to get. Is it a bottom fish or a top living fish, like a bass or a bluefish, as opposed to a flounder or a rockfish? Is it a marlin? Is it a shark? What? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have something that appeals to that particular fish. And here's another concept. I'm going to go to where the fish is. I'm going to go to where that fish is. And so either I'm going to get a boat, or I'm going to walk out on this dock, or I'm going to climb on the rocks of this jetty, because that's where this particular fish likes to hang out. And then I increase my odds of hooking the one I want to catch. It's the same thing with finding buyers for your listings. And I know right now it seems like it's easy because everybody wants to buy everything that you have. It's not always going to be like this. This is going to end. I cannot tell you when, but it will, because it always does. And you have to go back to really fishing again. But when you identify what kind of fish you want to get, you know what kind of equipment you need. You know where you need to be. A good person who understands water can look out over the sea, where the average person sees endless water. The experienced fisherman, fisherwoman, fisher person could look out and see little ruffles in the water that tells them this kind of fish is feeding over there. They can see a slick of oil over there, of natural fish oil, and they know the bluefish have been tearing into Menhaden over there. If I want to catch bluefish, I'm going to go over there. They can tell by looking at signals. They have identified their target market. That's exactly what the buyer profile story does during a listing presentation. You are telling the seller there's an 80% chance, 85% chance that this is where our buyer is. Let me tell you about the marketing plan I have developed to find this person for your home. You see, until that point, you were in the abstract. So before, when I talked about sweating, SWET, strengths, weaknesses, everything they do and turn it around to find my own USPs, I found that most of my competition hires a stager. They hire a stager. And so if I'm going to go into your house and try to convince you to list with me, because I'm going to hire a stager, you're like, well, anybody can do that. And so Jack better have a better stager. And so if you go and get a better stager than I have, then I've got to go find a better stager than you have. And pretty soon, one of us has to go out and hire Martha Stewart to be the stager, and there goes the whole commission. So when I, SWET, everything they do, E stands for they hire a stager, T stands for turn it around. I'm going to turn this around, and my USP is going to be, I am a market preparation expert. I may bring in a stager, but the stager will come in under my direction and control and expertise, because I know what makes the eyes of a buyer light up. And so what I'll do is I will tell a story to the seller. I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want to tell you a story about two homes that came in the market here in my marketplace at the same time, facing each other across a body of water. They were both around $1 million. They both needed new roofs. They both needed a lot of landscaping. They both needed new windows. Neither one had air conditioning. The bathrooms are old. The kitchen was old. Everything was out of date in both houses. One house sold in 3 weeks. The other house sold in a year in 3 weeks. What was the difference, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? What do you think the difference was? The difference was the house that sold in 3 weeks looked like the owner loved it. People walked in the front of this house, and even if it wasn't the right house for them, they felt, you could see it on their faces. They just felt a calmness. They just felt like you could see the joy in their face, even though it wasn't the right house for them. It's noticeable if you have your eyes open. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I've been with buyers for blankety blank years, or Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm new to the business, but the combined experience of all the agents of my office or company has led me to conclude that we know what makes the eyes of a buyer light up when they walk into a house. We are market preparation experts. We have created this checklist to get your home ready for sale. We may need a stager to fix one or two things here and there, but we are market preparation experts. Now, here's the thing. It's hard to compete with your market preparation expertise because it's uniquely yours. But you see what I did here? I'm doing two things. Number one, I'm taking something my competitor does and I'm doing the opposite, turning it around. Strengths, weakness, everything they do, they hire a stager. T, turn it around. I am a market preparation expert. So that is how I bring value to my seller. And I tell them the tale of two houses, because now they're interested, and I've drawn them in and I've asked them a question at the end. Why do you think one house sold in 3 weeks and the other one took a year in 3 weeks to sell? So anyway, that's how we talk about our market preparation expertise. My checklist will help you get, I think, 2 to 4 points of extra sales price when we go to market. Then we talk about photography. You know, if I do the same exercise here, strengths, weaknesses, everything they do, they take pictures, they use an iPhone 7, or they hire a photographer, and I want to turn it around. I art direct my photographer. I art direct my photographer, because if I'm competing with you for a listing, we both hire photographers, where's my USP? Where's my point of difference? So now we tell a story about taking pictures of a listing. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have less than 1 second or 2 seconds to capture somebody's attention online. I've been with buyers in a conference room looking at pictures as they go by on a big screen, trying to decide which homes to look at next. And I've seen them look at homes that I know are perfect for them, but they had no interest in seeing them because the cover shot was so boring and dull and uninspiring. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I will hire, we have a great photographer. His name is, whatever the case may be, Lucas, Craig, Lauren, whatever the case may be. They have an amazing camera. You should see the buttons and dials and readouts on this camera. They can make it do anything, but they have never sat in a conference room with a buyer like I have to know what makes them light up or glaze over. So I will art direct that photographer to make sure we capture the most magical cover shot of your property, so we will capture somebody's attention in that first 1 or 2 seconds we have to draw them in online. you see that? So we're turning around what our competition does. We're never dissing our competition. We're never saying, well, they just use an iPhone 7, they're no good. Or they're just going to hire a stager, they're no good. We never say that. We talk about what we do. Luxury stands on its own. And we tell a story about how we do it because it's more compelling and draws them in and they can see the value of what we do. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you know, having great photographs that I art direct with our photographer is great if we capture somebody's attention in that 1 or 2 seconds that we have. But then what if we have dull, boring copy afterwards? That's not going to work. You know, even Hemingway, one of the greatest authors of all time, had an editor. So I consider myself a halfway decent writer. But then when I send my work out to an editor, I'm amazed at how they turn things around. So when we are writing copy for a house, and I'll show you some of my listings in a bit, we always, always, always try to tell a story. I'll show you some examples in a bit. Then we talk about our hardcover brochure. And we do that by telling a story again. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, at the end of the day of looking at homes, your buyer is going to go back to their car, back to their hotel room, back to Boston, wherever the case may be, and they're going to have a whole stack of brochures. One of them is going to be heavier than all the others. One of them is going to be a hardcover coffee table type book. That's the one that's going to stand out. And that's the one that's going to talk about your house. See, once again, I've wrapped my USP into the story. I'll talk about showings. Let's say, you know, in my career in real estate, I've noticed all kinds of things that should never happen during the showing of a property. In fact, the 14 worst things I've ever seen, I put together in this book called 14 Showing No-Nos. I promise you that none of these will ever happen during the showing of your property. I will be personally present. And we don't just show your home, we actually demonstrate your home. Whatever the case may be, by land, by sea, by water, whatever we need to do, we will do it. And by the way, I did give this PDF to Paul, so it'll be wherever you download stuff, you'll be able to download the 14 Showing No-Nos book as part of our time together today. What have I got next? Yeah, land, sea, from the air. Here's an article that was in the Wall Street Journal back in, there's no date on there, but showing property by helicopter. We haven't done that yet, but it's out there. Using stories in an ad. We try to use stories in our copy all the time. Here's one we lifted from someone else. We had this property that faced west over a body of water, therefore it had great sunsets. It was right around the time that book and movie came out, so we called it 50 Shades of Bay. So if you don't have a story for your own listing, look for stories that are out there in the world. We're listing a property now, and a phenomenal property. It's going to be around $12 million. And our headline is going to be Paradise Found. And some people are going to know that that's sort of a turnaround on Paradise Lost. And the right people will know that. Video, gosh, I can't go into great detail here, but you know what? Your video needs to tell a story now. Because we have great quality, 2 minutes, 3 minutes at the max. Do a transcript. People like to search with video. Most buyers like to look inside homes. 73% of sellers are likely to list with an agent who promises to make a video of their home. And if you want to see some videos, gosh, all of our listings are selling like crazy. But if you go to my website, jackcottonrealtor.com, you can see some of our videos. For example, there's one there where the house was built in 17 something and floated down a river and put on the lot. Our video tells the story of the home's journey floating down the river. That's what draws people in. What's next? Storied listings. Let's talk about some storied listings. Stories add value. I'm going to give you some everyday examples. First of all, here's a diamond. This is called the BEAU SANCY diamond. It was a pretty big diamond. It was going to sell for between $1 and $4 million. And it actually sold for almost $10 million. And the reason was that it had a great story. It was a story that went with this diamond that caused it to sell more. I mean, can anything be more generic than a diamond? To me, they all look the same. I mean, honest to goodness, I love diamonds, but you put a pile of them on the table, they all look the same. This one had a story, went for 5 times the estimate. Here's a story in Nantucket I saw the other day, and they sell door stops in the window. Every kind of door stop you can think of. And they're like 50 bucks, maybe $100 if it's a really fancy one. So here's a door stop that somebody bought for like 50 bucks. And then they gave it to one of my clients as a gift they went over for dinner. They brought it over as a gift, a $50 doorstop. And sadly, at some point, after we sold the house, she passed away, and they had an estate sale, and they sold all the stuff. And the doorstop, they paid 50 bucks. They expected it to go for 250 bucks. It wound up going for 5,000 bucks. Why? Because of the story that was attached to the doorstop. I'm not going to go into that right now, but the story was really compelling. If you can develop a story for your listing, it's going to help you sell for more money. Here's the listing that we had. This is the beach house of the listing. It was our biggest sale ever. And this is a great story. At this very deck, you can see there, the youngest president of the United States our country's ever had was having lunch with the owner of this property. And he had just come back from his first tour as president of the entire world. And one thing he was struck by was all the beautiful gardens and all the capitals of all the countries around the world. And this lady was an avid gardener, no formal training, but a really good gardener. This property had incredible gardens that she had overseen over her years. And so he said to her, your country needs you to design a garden. Would you please design a garden for your country? And she was overwhelmed and blah, 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 blah. And finally, she said yes. And we all know the garden today as the Rose Garden at the White House. So when we're marketing this property, don't you think we used that story in the marketing of this property? The lady who designed the Rose Garden at the White House designed all the acreage here at this property. What's interesting is that the main house here, everyone who looked at it wanted to tear it down. It's just a rambling ranch house of around 7,000 or 8,000 square feet with really low doorways, a lot of functional obsolescence. But the story of this woman's life was so powerful, so compelling, that they didn't tear it down. They raised the doorways, they fixed it up. If you go by there by water now, the house is still there. The story is what saved this house from the wrecking ball. Here's another one. I love this house. We had a bunch of stories with this house. The best story, some of you have heard this before, was it was built in 1894 or 1897. And the day he finished the house, he had a portrait done of his wife. Her name was Zaide, Z-A-I-D-E, and he hung the portrait to the left of the fireplace in the living room. That was in 1890 something. Well, here it is, 2000 something. Now it's 2020. That portrait hasn't moved in all this time. In fact, when you go into this room where the portrait is, no matter where you stand in the room, Zaide's eyes are on you the whole time. She never stops looking at you, no matter where you go into the room. And the legend goes that you better not take that portrait down. People love that story. This was a high maintenance property, and it sold in large part because the people bought into the story. What kind of a story can you come up with for your house? Here's one we just listed. You can see this on my Jack Cotton Realtor website. It's an old house. It's really, this picture makes it look really great. It's in bad shape. This is built in like 18 something. But the story here is that the whaling captain who built the house back in the 1800s buried some treasure on the property. So when we talk about copy and compelling copy, you can read the copy for this listing on my website. It begins with sneaking out of the house at night. There's nothing we propose or condone. But that is a hook. So we tell a story in our copy. Sneaking out of the house at night is nothing we would suggest or condone. But the rumor has it that over the years, the children of this house did exactly that, sneaking out into the yard on the moonless nights to dig for buried treasure using kitchen spoons so as not to wake anyone up inside the house. We talk about the floors must not creak and the stairs must not creak, but we wrapped a story into all of our copy, and everyone's calling us on this house because of the story that we tell in the copy for the house. Find the story, ask some questions, do some research, put it in your video, put it in your copy. We haven't sold this yet. In large part, it really needs a lot of work. In fact, probably if a house does need a wrecking ball, it probably is this one. Here's a great story. We listed this property. There's a peninsula down here between two lakes. And the guy who first bought it, believe it or not, was a pilot in World War I and World War II. This guy was in both world wars, and he owned a ladies' clothing company. He owned a small chain of stores in the Boston area. But what a cool guy. And the story is that when he was looking for a beautiful place to build his summer home, he got up in his biplane and just flew around looking for the perfect piece of property. So we rented a biplane and a pilot. We went up there with a camera and we reenacted his flight looking for the perfect property, which was, of course, the one we had for sale. And it sold like that. People love these stories. It makes your listing come alive. Now what's happening is that sellers are calling us because they like the videos and stories we're doing for our listings. And so we're getting come list me calls based upon the power of the stories that we're telling with our properties. So I hope that makes sense. This was a fun one. And I learned on this one, for example, that it's against FAA regulations to mount a camera on a plane. So I had to actually hold the camera as the plane flew around. But that's part of the fun of being in real estate. You get to do fun, cool things like that. So the final stories, as our time together draws to a close here, is to develop your own stories. You have experiences out in life all the time. I didn't tell my shoe shine story, but here's the thing. We are out in the world dealing with people all the time, and we're in the real estate business. And many times we think that, you know, we are in real estate, but we are actually in a business. We are actually in the business of real estate. And we need to watch what other businesses do and find ways to bring those stories into our business. We bring stories from UPS. We bring stories from the shoe shine guy. We bring stories from a leather bag store, for example, into our business all the time. When you start to think about it, stories start to become more evident. You make a conscious effort to find them. So look for other businesses, look for experiences, observe and apply what's going on. My wife always says to me, everything you look at is real estate. You know, I'm at a baseball game watching the Red Sox and the Yankees, and I'm sitting in the third row. Good seats somebody got me. And I'm watching there, and I'm watching the guy at, what's that called? Oh, the guy who's on the deck. No, there's no deck, but he's called on the deck or on deck. And I'm watching him swing at the bat. And it occurs to me that that's like a listing presentation. He's practicing, he's role playing with the pitcher before he's actually at home plate. And if the Red Sox could role play before they get in an actual home plate situation, why shouldn't I be practicing before I get into a situation one-on-one with a buyer or seller? Everywhere I look, I see examples that I can bring into my real estate business and make me better at what I do. So develop stories for your business. Decide on what your USPs are. Do you have USPs? What makes you different and better from your competition? What do you do that brings more value to the people in your life who are selling their properties? And then wrap a story around those USPs. Have a process and a checklist and a procedure for everything that you do, because now you can be providing consistent service to make that story become relevant and alive. And you will connect with your people at the same time. Lastly, live your story. I love the story that I've created that I live for myself. Figure out your story and live it. It's a really cool thing. And the last thing I'll say, our quote here before we go, is that, and don't take this the wrong way, but a compelling story, even if factually inaccurate, can be more emotionally compelling than a dry recitation of the truth. So don't take that the wrong way. What I'm trying to say is that stories are fun, stories are interesting. Use them to connect, use them to differentiate, use them to add value to you, your brand, and your listings as well. So this is a good time to do questions, I guess. What's the definition? I'm starting from the bottom and working up here. Yeah, somebody wrote unique selling proposition. Could creating a story tale work for all listings? Kimberly, yeah, I think it can, because basically interview your sellers. In fact, if you take the time to interview your seller during a listing presentation, if you actually, here's another example from real life. My whole listing process is partly the shoe shine guy and partly a visit to the doctor's office. And so I do a listing presentation like a doctor does a diagnosis before he or she prescribes. Ask a ton of questions. So ask them about what's your favorite experience here? Tell me a story about a wonderful time at your property. And you can find stories like that. On the rare occasion when we can't find a story, we'll make one up. We had a listing some years ago, it was a 9-acre island here in the village. We made up a story. We did it in a video about two women. One was a location scout making a movie. The other one was the property representative. And so they were searching for the right property to make this movie, and they were discussing the property back and forth. And the cool thing was this property had a lot of, what's the word? Shortcomings, had a lot of, you might call imperfections. And so they were bringing them up in dealing with objections in the video. It was really funny. You talk about the kitchen, the appliances, the this or the that, and they were dealing with these things. You were watching them overcome objections in the video telling the story. So anyway, I'm never going to see all these questions here. But what we are going to do is, like I said before, we're going to print all these, and any that I missed, I will make a video and get that to Paul. We can post it somewhere. And where else have I got here? How do you keep the relationship you build with your clients from going too far into a personal friendship? That's a great question. How do I keep the relationships with my clients from going too far into a personal friendship? I think it's easier for me because I don't have that great of a personality. So I actually know, I mean, I'm a worker bee. I'm not trying to be them. I'm not trying to be one of them. I'm a worker bee. I grew up on the other side of town from these people, and they like me because I have a lot of expertise and knowledge, and I get results for them. And we are friendly, but I never cross the line of being a trusted advisor. I'm not looking for friends. I have enough friends, and I really don't have any more time to spend, with other people than the ones I already have to spend time with. It's funny, when I do my taxes every year, my account, I have a lot of expenses, but the one expense on my P&L list is zero, and I mean a zero every year, is entertainment. Zero. I don't hang out with people. We're friendly, but except in rare occasions, we're not really friends. I'm a newbie in real estate and glad for this wealth of knowledge. Thank you very much. That's great. Great info and stories. Yikes, where can I get a top story? Where can I get a copy of this?
Yeah, your one book, there was a lot of people wanting to know how they could get A Tale of Two Houses.
Oh, A Tale of Two Houses. I can give you a PDF on how to create A Tale of Two Houses. I can send that to you, Paul, if they want to download it. But the Tale of Two Houses itself is my personal staging or market preparation book. So it's not really a book. It's what I use for market preparation. But I'll send you my how to do book. Does that work?
Yeah, that'll do it. And then I'll put it up in their account.
Okay. Jack Potter. Colleen says, I'm the best speaker she's seen in 57 years, but I hope she's not thinking of somebody else. But anyway, Lillian, so good to see you. I love you, Lillian. I can't believe you're learning from me because I've learned so much from you. You are such a treasure in this business. So great to have you here today. Hard to read all these questions. Could creating a story...
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Can it work for all listings? Absolutely. We tell them, we do them for every listing. We're known for expensive properties because they're more interesting, I guess, but we don't discriminate on price. If you're in my neighborhood, especially where I grew up, I'll take a house for $400,000 or $500,000, which is about the baseline here. And I'll work just as hard creating a story for that house as I do for a $5 million house, because the results mean more to those people than they do to the $5 million people. But a story will work for every listing. Trust me, look for a story, and your sellers will give you one. They'll talk about the time they had a wedding in the backyard or something like that. We did one yesterday. We haven't finished it yet. We talked about, going up the river behind this house and running into a woman with her children, and she was showing her kids where she had spent her childhood growing up on this river. And we talk about the circle of life and how everything happens in cycles on the river. And this home is a place where you create memories and just treasure the circle of life. It's not totally finished yet, but you know what I'm saying? We always look for a story angle with every single listing.
And Jack, we did also have a lot of people interested in your market prep checklist. I don't know if you're willing to.
That's the same thing as a tale of two houses.
Okay.
It's the same thing. A tale of two houses is our market preparation checklist.
Okay. So you'll send that over to me and then I'll put that up.
I sure will. Yep.
And then we did have one question. It was way back. Somebody says, when you have properties over 2 million, where do you list them beyond the MLS and the syndication sites? And then do you pay for everything or get the sellers to participate?
Oh, that's a great question. In the old days, we used to get 1% upfront from a seller for marketing. And those days are long gone. So we pay for the marketing, and there's a million places to put your listing. A lot of it's going to depend on the company that you're with. But if you're not affiliated with a larger company, you should check out luxuryrealestate.com. Who's who in luxury real estate? Luxuryrealestate.com. It's a great portal for putting up your listings, and you don't have to be a big company. You can do it as an agent, but we're everywhere. WallStreetJournal.com, InternationalHeraldTribune.com, HongKongTatler.com. I can't even think of them all. But there's a million places to be. It really doesn't cost that much money to be online. Although what really costs money now is the photography. But the way things are going now, even that's becoming less. We used to spend $15,000 on a video. And now with technology, we can do a video for $1,500. We used to rent a drone. It was like $6,000 to rent a drone for half a day. Now you can buy a drone for $1,200. So anyway, prices of a lot of things are coming down. We can shoot a video now and tell a great story for around $1,500. And here's the other secret for video. Like, we have a listing, it's not on my site anymore. We have a lot of sea captains' homes here, but we had the sea captain's home. And so we bought a video clip. You can go and buy video clips from these video clip places for like $50. So get this. This house was built in, again, 1800 by this guy who went to sea as a cabin boy at 9 years old. Can you imagine saying goodbye to your parents at 9 years old? I'm going off. See you later, Mom and Dad. I'm 9 now. It's time to go. So this guy went to sea at 9 years old as a cabin boy, worked his way up to being a captain of a ship and trading all over the world, actually opened up a restaurant in Boston, very successful, and built this house. So our video was, in the beginning, was a clip video that we bought online of a sailing ship, an old sailing ship. And I'm doing the voiceover of this kid going to sea at 9. And some of these agents in my marketplace are so funny. They're like, Jack, that is the best video you ever did. Where'd you learn to drive a boat like that? And I'm laughing. It was in January. I didn't drive a boat like that. We just bought a clip for $50 online. So there's a lot of stuff, resources out there where you can use to tell a story of your property. Renting a biplane for half an hour, it's like a couple of $100. And it was like the thrill of a lifetime for me to be up there flying around. If you ever flown in a biplane, do it, but look for different ways to tell the story of your listings. This is a tough business. And I want to say we're in tough times right now. And I don't mean that from the standpoint of we're not making any money, because we're making tons of money, but it's hard work. Everyone's in a bad mood. When you get multiple offers, one gets accepted, the other people are all angry. So people are all yelling at you. Have some fun in this business by thinking of stories and making them come alive in your videos for your sellers. It's part of the fun of being in the business. What else have we got here? Am I missing any other questions, Paul?
No, I think, yeah, we got about everything. It was that book and the checklist were the two really main ones, but you're going to send that over to me. I'm just reminding everybody, Jack's going to send that over to me. And then it's not going to be the actual book. It's going to be for you to how to create your own book. Is that right, Jack?
Yes, how to create your own book. If you want my book, I have to charge for it. I'm not here to sell stuff. So basically, this PDF will tell you everything you need to do to create your own book, which is actually the best way to create a market preparation checklist, is to create your own, or get in a team of people and brainstorm it together. Whenever I teach the luxury class for CRS, one of the most important breakouts that we do is to create a market preparation checklist using the best minds in the industry who happen to be gathered for that luxury class. So that's another thing we could do, is have us teach that luxury class in your city, and we'll create one all together. And we have the best real estate minds, usually in the region, coming together. You can create a great market preparation checklist. Do I rate all my copy? I do. Sometimes I have it polished, but sometimes I feel like, I should like smoke something before I start writing this stuff. But some people think I do smoke stuff before I write my stuff, but I just happen to like it. To me, writing is a gift. The gift that God gave us to be able to make marks on a piece of paper that can change another person's emotional state is a miracle that we need to spend more time appreciating and spend more time developing that skill. But if you don't want to, just go to Craigslist. There's a million writers on Craigslist.
I just had one more question. Someone want to know, how long do your listing agreements go for?
6 to 12 months.
Okay. I think that's it for now. I'll go ahead and share my screen, the final slide here. See if I can get this to work properly. There we go. I have the last slide. There's Jack's contact information still on the screen. If you are on this call today, you do not need to go in there and fill out the evaluation. That's going to be done for you automatically. We just found that we've had about 800 people on this call today. If you all go to the website at once, it crashes. Everybody's angry. Nobody can get in there to fill out the affidavit. So we're just going to give you credit right away. But if you are watching the recording of this here, the link is on the screen right there, that bit.ly link. It's that bit.ly selling luxury homes RRC. And that will take you over there for the slides, the handout, and also for the valuation link, all of that. And just to remind everybody, our next webinar is tomorrow for CRS week. Tim Herr is going to be here to talk about social media. And then Dale Carlton will be here on Thursday to talk about how to handle virtual negotiations. And then Lee Brown, everybody's friend, will be here on Friday to close us out, 11 a.m. Central, special time of 11 a.m. Central. Trends and insights for 2021. We're going to see what Lee thinks is going to be happening in 2021. I'm sure we're all wondering that. But Lee's got some insights on that, and she's going to share that with us.
She's awesome.
Oh, yeah, she is. She's amazing. Well, and I also wanted to say thank you to our sponsor, Pillar to Post Home Inspectors, for this. You have been supporting CRS Week for as long as I can remember. And we just want to say we appreciate your continued support. And Jack, I also want to thank you so much for doing this. It's been great. I can tell they all loved it. And we will hopefully we'll see everybody back here tomorrow, September 23rd, with Tim Herr. So Jack, before we get out of here, is there anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, go volunteer for CRS. I just have the time of my life here with you today. There's something you can do to help make the organization better. People can learn and get better from your involvement in CRS, and you're going to get way more in return. It's life-changing to your business. Just do it.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that, Jack. Let me post the link in there for that. And for any of you that missed that, the link, if you want to volunteer for next year, is right there. And remember, if anybody is saying, hey, I would love to be able to do a webinar, contact me at pdahl@crs.com. And Jack, with that said, thanks again. And thank you to Pillar to Post. And hopefully we see everybody back here tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Jack.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.